This is the ABQ Business Podcast with your host, Jason Rigby. Each week we'll interview visionary business leaders to inspire the creative power and spirit that's in every entrepreneur. Discussing strengths, weaknesses, strategies, systems, and the problems we can all solve together for a new future for local small business.
What is up, guys? Super excited to have Martin Lean on the show today. Martin, we've got some stories to tell. We've got precious gems, we have mass text messaging, and we have the country of Norway all in one. And we have a year of craziness that happened since May with your company. So I'm encouraged to hear this story. I think it'll be awesome for a lot of business owners. We have a lot out there that listen to the show. Martin, we always hear these stories of Norway growing up, and we hear, like it's like the perfect place and people are the happiest there. And how was your life growing up in Norway?
Yeah, no, and thank you for having me on. It's going to be fun. The life in Norway, of course, grew up there, born and raised, lived there for the first 20 years of my life. It's hard to draw parallels to like a youth in America, but I would probably say, imagine America just 1.5 years delayed when it comes to pop music. Mm. That's more like the direct correlation I can draw. And then I guess other than that, it's a little different. Like it's not as much focus on, or it wasn't anyway when I was younger, as much focus on entrepreneurship and capitalism, pushing hard on building new stuff. It was more kind of making sure that there was a good work-life balance. I think some of the parallels that I'm trying to draw to like running a company now, having employees, is kind of some of the values that we got from Norway. The reason why we have like unlimited PTO is because when I was growing up, my parents had like 8 weeks of mandatory vacation. So we always had like a full month where we could sail around Europe as a family, and it was always the greatest time. And I don't want to rob anyone from that here. So I would do the same here. Same with kind of the healthcare as well. We made sure that we could cover 100% of the insurance premiums for everybody, just because if you get hurt in Norway, it was the same thing. You don't really think about it. You go to the hospital. So there's a couple, one of those that draws in that I take a little pride in trying to recreate here, because that was definitely like a part of the what you were saying about the happiest people on the planet. I'm not entirely sure if that's true or if that's just a test, but can definitely see that helping morale.
Now, growing up, obviously you grew up in a whole different system than here in the United States. What was it like? Were you like searching for things that were entrepreneurial, or were you entrepreneur when you were little and kind of different than the other kids?
Yeah. I guess you could say it was a little different. It was, I actually didn't even realize that was what I was doing. It felt more like I was like doing some Inspector Gadget stuff, trying to make small projects for no reason. I think the first real like venture, I don't know if I would call it a venture, but first company test that I did was in second grade, I believe. Me and a buddy of mine, he had just gotten a calligraphy set. And he was like, okay, yeah, no, I can just like make cool drawings. Look at this, can make it on like a white eraser, like a pencil eraser. And I was like, oh shit, that's kind of cool. Let's check if the rest of the classmates would want this. So we basically started this white like eraser tattoo shop in the school in like second grade, and tricked the entire class to basically get these tattoos. We would first like just make the little drawings, whatever they would want. Then we would pour some silicone that we would melt on top so that it would stay firm and like stay on there without disappearing. And then we made just enough to like cover our sweet tooth. Not much, but it felt like a fortune back then.
That's awesome.
And so we continued doing that. Like, I think the first time I realized, I was like, okay, I really like just solving problems. And I don't have any specific interest in like, oh, this specific field, like medicine or engineering or anything. I was just like, oh, see a problem in the world, let's try and solve it. And one of the first ones was when I was 16. And there was this relay race in Oslo called Holmenkollen-stafetten. I'm not going to expect you to recognize which one that is, but as a matter of scale, I would probably call it like the New York Marathon of Norway, even though, of course, we're 5 million people, so not big at all. But the biggest problem that I had with it was my mom would always race in it through her company, and there was no way to really tell where in the race she was. And I'd seen like a news article not long ago where New York Marathon had these GPS tracking vests. And I was like, oh, well, if you can have vests that can track people and show it up on an app, why don't they have that in a relay stick, and they can have that at the Oslo Marathon? So at 16, I was like, okay, well, this is something I can totally solve. I just need to put people in touch with each other. So first, I reached out to the manager of the relay race, and I was like, "Hey, I'm pretty confident I can solve this for you, and you should just trust me. Like, I'll get this done for you. Like, how much would this like be worth for you?" And I have no idea why he trusted a 16-year-old to actually try and broker this, but he gave me the green light and was like, "Yeah, no, go for it. Why not?" Maybe he just thought I was just full of it and wouldn't even try, right? So I reached out to the producers of the vests for the New York City Marathon, which was Tata Worldwide, massive conglomerate. Got in touch with their president, set up a
Wow.
meeting in Oslo where I would just put on like a suit that I got for like confirmation, and sat in, brought one of my friends because I thought that would make me look a lot more professional. And we were just speaking broken English to this man that had traveled to Oslo to meet with what he thought was the managers of the Oslo kind of relay race. And he was like, "Yeah, no, this is what we can do. This is the pricing we can do." Of course, I just nodded along. I was like, "Yeah, okay." So finally, I got all the details. I went back to the Oslo Marathon, like the Oslo relay race one, and he was very impressed. He was like, "Oh wow, yeah, let's look into this." And I'm pretty sure both parties thought that I was a representative of the other. So there was that was my first mistake. Uh, but at the end of it, they actually got this implemented, and I ended up with no money left over for that. So it was just a great project, and I got to meet some influential people. But it was still I still hadn't cracked the code on how to make money from this. So I was like, okay,
Was
well, I
it
need to find a way to study this.
Was it
So go ahead.
because, like for me, when I was young, it was always like I just I was in the idea of that I could use my time and make money, and that I
Yeah.
could create something out of nothing and just create money, in the sense. Was it that? I mean, were you motivated by money, or was it just trying to solve problems, and that you would see something? Do you have an engineer mindset or?
Yeah, I think it was a good bit of both. I wouldn't have done this if I wasn't annoyed by the fact that my mom was running around and I wouldn't actually know if she had passed, if she was like in the middle of the lap until 4 hours later. So I was
Mm.
probably just a little pissy because I think the last race it was raining. So I was like, okay, well this is ridiculous. Like there's so many people racing, I must have missed her, right? So that was just like from a this is so stupid. Why is it not already solved? Like impatience, I would call it. But yeah, of course, there was definitely like a portion of it where I was like, oh wow, we're talking to like the president of Tata. Like we can probably make some money from this, like either like a referral sale or something. But at that point, I didn't have any reference points. I was just 16, right? Had no reference point in like this is how referral fees work. This is how it works if I wanted to work as a consultant. Didn't know that you actually had to have a contract ahead of this stuff. So it's I think it was blissful ignorance and a little bit of optimism that got me to kind of put in the work that I did. But at the very least, it was fun. And looking back at it, I definitely wouldn't have done it differently. I think it's cool thinking back at it now, even though I obviously can't take credit for it since they got in touch afterwards and got all the work done to actually make it implemented. Still a little fun. I feel like it's something that I got to set in motion that is now kind of out there, and that definitely takes some pride in that.
No, I love that. I think there's always these cool stories, when you find people that are true entrepreneurs, because they're so unique and different. So I love getting these original stories. There's always the lemonade stand or trading bikes, all of that. Was there books that you were reading or any type of influence there in Norway like there is here?
No, there really wasn't. So in Norway, it was a little strange because the school system is completely different. Basically, you have one more year of high school, which covers basically your gen eds in college. So when you then apply for a college, you apply for more or less the job you're wanting to do. So if I wanted to be if I wanted to build bridges, for instance, I would go and get a degree as a structural engineer, and I could go in first year in college and actually learn about bridges, not learn about like religion and weightlifting like
Right.
you have to with gen eds. So it's a little different. So but there was no like loose enough plan that would allow me to learn a little bit of everything, like it is here in America, where you can actually just take a degree in entrepreneurship now, which is what I ended up doing. That's kind of what drew me to America, because it was like, okay, yeah, I could either go in and I can try and get like a leadership business manager kind of education, and I would know how to work and function in a really big organization. But there was nothing there that told me like, oh, Martin, this is what you have to do to really start a company. This is what you have to do to rely on your taxes. This is what you file to get your Norwegian equivalent of an LLC started. There really was no education within just the practical and strategical kind of process of starting a company. So, yeah, no, it's kind of sad to think about, but I know right now it's definitely changed a lot. I know Oslo has become more of a startup hub than what it was
Right.
when I left, which warms my heart. But I think there was little to no entrepreneurial books except for the massive victories that you hear about, but they are now also massive companies as well. So, yeah, it's a little different.
Now was so obviously, did you go to college here in the United States?
Yeah, yeah. So I that was actually the first time I'd ever set foot in America. Was the first day of college. I knew after that like kind of process with Tata and the relay race that I was like, okay, well, obviously I enjoy just starting and doing these minor projects that could eventually be bigger. So what I want to study is how to start and run companies. And with Norway not really having a direct path for me, and I didn't want to waste 3 years of my life focusing on like an area where I wouldn't necessarily be working. I looked around, I looked outside of Norway, and I was kind of set on the fact that I had to go international. And the most obvious choice for this sort of education was America.
Mhm.
So I looked up kind of like the best schools, best undergrads for entrepreneurship. And surprisingly found the University of Oklahoma at the time was top three undergrad entrepreneurship programs. So I was like, okay, well, very intriguing. Of course, applied to a couple different schools, got into to most of them, but ultimately it was kind of driven by a kind of two sides. Both Norway covers the education, but only up to so much. So, of course, no parents in Norway really save up for college for their kids. So that would have been a huge burden if I went above that. And then also was looking for just an American experience, was looking for kind of like the Midwest, and also, of course, a good entrepreneurship program. So landed on OU. But yeah, I mean, it was quite the culture shock. I'll
Oh,
admit
I
that.
could imagine that would be a culture shock for just about anyone going straight to
Yeah.
Oklahoma. That was your view of
Yeah. No,
America too.
yeah, exactly. No, I mean, it was very like, I mean, for me, it was exotic, right? Like, I'd never been in America. Coming to a place like OU was extreme school spirit, American football, fraternities, like the whole shebang. So, this is all stuff that you see in movies, right? I didn't even know fraternities was really real. Like what all we see, of course, in Norway is like, oh, yeah, no, you see like Hollywood movies, it's all fake. So, seeing stuff like fraternities being real, you're like, what is going on? So it was a fun experience, but definitely a little intimidating. there was this small stuff that I missed because I landed, got dropped off, and just kind of like the social differences in just sayings and phrases and common kind of wording was what threw
Right.
me off. I mean, I was like, as soon as I got there, I was standing in line waiting to get up to my dorm room. And mind you, I'd been traveling for like 30 hours because there was like so many layovers. So I was exhausted. And then, of course, the heat was there. So this girl came up to me and was like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Okay, no, I mean, very personal question, but I'll share. I'm extremely warm. Been traveling for 30 hours, and I continued to ramble for like 5 minutes about this, and got a very tired look back. And then she was like, "Cool," and just like walked away. And I was so offended. I was like, "What? What did you even ask me then?" So then, yeah, I didn't understand that. That was just like, you're supposed to say, "Oh, good. How are you doing?" Right? But yeah, I thought it was like a real question. So get into the elevator. I'm staying there. This dad turns around. This is right after this happened, and asks the same exact question. And I'm like, "What is going on? I'm not falling for this again." So I was just like, kind of answering a little rudely. Was like, "Oh, I'm good. How are you doing?" And he just smiled ear to ear and was like, "Oh yeah, good, me too." And turned around, and I was like, "Oh wow, so that's the secret." So it's kind of crazy, yeah. But yeah, there's been a lot of these kind of experiences where uh, I might have not have realized how much of a difference, kind of like the social kind of awareness impacts, like being international in America. And it's small stuff like that that makes it so much easier to assimilate. But again, nobody teaches that.
Yeah, where are you at now? Are you in the United States now?
Yeah, yeah. So now we're actually in Tulsa.
Oh, okay.
But I've been around a little bit across the U.S. Lived a little bit in Boulder, Denver, San Diego, and Chicago.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've gotten
That's
to
pretty
see a
well
couple
rounded.
places. Yeah, so now it's been a couple of different places as well. But yeah, no, it's been like for just running a company in Tulsa. It was also where our lead investor came from. It's just incredibly cost effective.
Oh, I could
And right
imagine.
now, with everybody being remote anyway, it's crazy how far your money can go when you're in kind of like Tulsa, which is like, when I compare it to like a city that you would kind of see a lot of activity and stuff going on, as well as a lot of like options with nature and stuff. The closest I would compare it to is probably even Denver when it comes to city. It's very different than what I had when I was living in OKC.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. A lot of I was listening to a marketing expert, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about that last night. He's like, it's so silly to think that you have to be in New York or in the Silicon Valley, especially with internet companies and now with COVID. And he's like, I would go to the cheapest places and start your companies, go to
Yeah.
like Louisiana or something like that, where I think the cost of living. We have our startup is in New Mexico here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's very inexpensive to live. So employment's inexpensive. So, that's an idea for people that are out there. You don't have to start it in San Francisco or LA or New York City. It's going to give you costs that are, ridiculous. So after Oklahoma, now when you were in University of Oklahoma, did you start reading entrepreneur books then? Did you start like saying, "Oh wow," because you were getting educated on this? So did it begin to open up for you? When did you start getting into like, "Oh, I can start my own company"?
Oh yeah, no, that was right away. Like I was there for that purpose, and I also was very aware of how expensive it was. Because I mean, the comparable for me was to stay in Norway and pay absolutely nothing. Instead, I was here paying like 30 grand a year. So
Right.
I was suddenly so hungry to get the absolute most out of it, and then getting to kind of get, I would say, like emerged by all that was offered at OU as well. I would say for the first year, it was probably just like getting more or less assimilated, getting used to the culture, the people, the phrases. But Like the second year, I got a lot more serious when it came to just trying to reach out to a bunch of startups, see where I could help out, and also start a couple stuff. A lot of people don't realize this, but like for international students to work, you're actually not allowed to work for somebody else unless you get college credit for it. But that also means that the college takes a cut. So I had to pay the college $6,000 to allow credit hours for me to be allowed to make minimum wage at a startup for a
Oh,
semester.
wow.
Yeah. So I was like, okay,
That's
well, this is
ridiculous.
kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Why am I paying you for credit hours that I'm frankly working for? It's like you have no professors that need to do something for this. And that it's kind of strange, but that is also what pushed me a lot to try and start a couple of projects because I'm allowed to start an LLC. So I was like, oh, wow. So I could probably make some money just working as a consultant to a company, like kind of through my own thing. And that's kind of what I did. I started that. I did a bunch of different projects through college. I started a drone project that was meant to like clean skyscrapers. Went into starting a system automation consultancy. And then, of course, I worked for two or three different startups as well. So I tried to do as much as I could. But I think the tipping point was probably when I got into the Colorado Boulder startup summer program. It was kind of hosted through CU Boulder. Weirdly enough, CU Boulder's law school. But we were very tightly working with the Techstars office that is in Boulder, and then also working with all the local entrepreneurs. And through that, you got to do kind of an internship where you start your own company. Then you also worked for a startup. And then additionally, you would have seminars and stuff where you would learn about startups. So suddenly there was like more or less three internships all in one summer. I was stupid enough to also take classes over the summer as well through OU. So I didn't have much of a social life, but it was probably like the most revealing thing I've ever been a part of. Obviously had no money because I wasn't allowed to work for money. So I had ended up having to just kind of volunteer my hours at the startup, also trying to build my own and going to everything, and then also doing the classes. So I was like, wow, there's really like, you can achieve a lot if you're just focusing on it. Because in retrospect, I would have never chosen to do that. It kind of just ended up happening. So getting that much kind of experience and exposure to a variety of different startups and ideas made me kind of open my eyes and be like, you know what, there's really nothing that's like impossible in this. You just have to kind of jump into it. And what was also pretty revealing was many of the startups that was working in like a very specialty field, many of the young founders that was there, they weren't actually experts in those fields. They had just learned about them, found a problem, and were solving it. And now the solution was working. They didn't really have to validate their kind of credibility in the space more so than what the results of their products were doing. The only thing that they were mentioning helped them was, of course, with raising capital. So that opened my eyes to like, oh wow, maybe I can do a drone startup, right? So it's it's been an interesting journey, but yeah, I wouldn't have kind of attributed it specifically to like a book or a reading or anything. I would probably say it's mostly just experience and getting the options of working in a startup that really opened my eyes.
I cannot believe that the higher education system's so fucked up here in the United States. I cannot believe that you'd have to pay $6,000 to go work for a startup. And then, it always amazes me, and I know where you're in Norway, this is probably true, but it's like, why are we making our young people pay for education? That's the dumbest thing
Right.
ever.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. It's been kind of like a surprising area, but it also makes it more like I've at least realized it is an industry, and
Yes,
they
100%.
really do make money from it. Like I don't really understand the endowment situation and why the fees will go up, but yeah, I could go on that for years. but but
Yeah,
yeah, I
no,
mean that specific one, it's like I get it because it's like yeah, I get that the U.S. government definitely doesn't want to have like a bunch of people apply to just like community colleges, taking 3 credit hours, and then they're actually there to work because then they get like a work visa more or less. So I
Right.
understand why they need to regulate it. But yeah, they should definitely find a way to regulate it where they can just validate whether or not I'm just working 15 to 20 hours a week instead of a full time, without having to pay. Because that was definitely a hard hit when you're already not having any money.
Yeah, I could bet. Yeah, I mean, it's just, the viewpoint of our country, and we could get into that side note on that. So, the program in Boulder, Colorado, when you were there, was it where you were? I mean, you were creating these startups, and then were you working with? So was it like an incubator?
Yeah, yeah. So it was more or less an incubator. So it was, I think it was a cooperative kind of project between the Boulder office for Techstars and the kind of the Flatirons school, like the law school at CU, where they were partnering up. But we got to kind of hear seminars and learn from everybody that was the experts at Techstars. So it was, yeah, I would say it was pretty life changing going through it. I mean, of course, it was rough. I had no income, of course, so I ended up having to just kind of befriend people to see if I could get an invite to barbecues so that I might get a good dinner that weekend. So it's a strange situation, but honestly, it's totally worth it. Obviously, if you are an American and going through it, couldn't recommend it higher. Being able
No,
to make money being there, that would probably be a little bit better, but still worth it even when I didn't.
no, I love that. And so you graduate from University of Oklahoma, and now you're looking at. Did you go right into starting Respond Flow, or was there some failures along the way before you started Respond Flow?
Yeah, I mean, oh wow, plenty of failures. I can tell you that much. But most of them happily happened like while I was still in college, kind of starting these small projects on the side. And but yeah, right after graduation, I actually went to work for a medical device startup in Oklahoma City. Was specializing in prosthetics. It was really fun. Got to come in on the ground floor. Was like the 11th employee, I think, and the first like real business employee. So I was kind of tasked with getting the company into just sales and focusing on growth. And I had previously worked for the company that I was actually working for in Denver while I was going through the internship. I stayed on with them for a year, learning how to automate and set up customer success automations for some of the biggest companies in the world, where it was like Expedia, Nike, Unilever, and Transamerica. So I got to see how they were functioning, and it was really eye opening, seeing kind of like the next level technology that they had access to. But granted, they were paying $3 million for licenses to IBM Watson to be able to automate these interactions and everything. So definitely not something that was available to small and medium-sized businesses, but it was still really intriguing to see how a enterprise software startup like that worked. And then when going into the clinical and healthcare system, kind of using some of that information and automation kind of abilities to try and optimize all the inefficiencies that could go on in an industry like that. I mean, people are still using fax for everything, which was probably the most frustrating thing coming into it for that transition between those two industries. But yeah, so it was fun working there. It was actually while I was working there that I came up with the idea for RespondFlow. So I was tasked with finding a way for us to get in front of more customers and getting them on the phone while I was kind of working and leading biz dev and sales. And our sales team was having great success with Facebook ads. We were getting like several thousand leads for patients who had seen an ad for 5 seconds and were like, wow, I want this prosthetic socket. Just, I guess it would help if I give a little bit of background on what that product is. So basically, it revolutionized when it comes to comfortable prosthetic sockets, because instead of being just like a rigid socket between, of course, the residual limb and the prosthesis, they were using sort of a hammock design. So it was game changing when it came to it, and of course would help blood flow and comfort for the patients. So it was a very, like, for the patients that got the ability to get this, of course, could have been a game changer. So it was really, really a fun project to work with. And of course, the patients responded to that and was very interested in getting into this technology. And the problem was only 9% ever picked up the phone on the time that they had scheduled the consultation, which of course was not ideal. These were leads that, while it was a lot of engagement and everybody was super excited, still leads that we had paid for through just paying through Facebook ads. So missing out on everybody except for 9% was unacceptable. So of course, being frustrated a little bit, I called up a bunch and was like, until I finally got a hold of them, was like, hey, so just, I was super excited to talk to you. I thought you were excited to talk to us. Just wanted to check in, like why you didn't pick up or why you didn't want to meet to the scheduled meeting that we had. And the overwhelming response was they were afraid of robocallers, and therefore just didn't pick up the phone. So kind of going in with that in mind, we talked with the team and we got to the conclusion, okay, how about we just send a personalized message, just a text message that says, hey, this is Martin, super excited to learn more about you. Can't wait to talk in 30 minutes. That way they know this is the phone number that I'm going to be calling from. They know that this is something that I like you have already scheduled up for. So it's not something, if they forgot it or signed up very late in the day or something, maybe I've forgotten about. And by doing so, we increased the conversion rate by 233%, which was incredible. So I was like, wow, that is perfect. But of course, that opened doors for new problems. Now the sales team was spending a majority of their time while doing kind of 4 of these calls an hour, spending most of their time texting while they were calling. And of course, mistexting names, texting the wrong number, and then maybe saying the wrong name while they're on the phone because they're writing a different name. So it was not ideal to kind of have that as a human process. And of course, taking from my previous experience working with systems automations and the likes for the bigger companies, I was like, okay, this is possible to solve. Can we do it without having to pay like a $3 million license? That's the question. So I went to work, started looking into every single tool that was on the market that claimed to do kind of text automation. And I was like, I'm convinced this must exist. Like, there's no way it doesn't. I mean, texting is nothing new. It's not something that like you wouldn't expect to find. But there was nothing on the market did 3 very simple things: automate a message with a human delay, like 3 minutes or 4 minutes after somebody fills in a form, sending it from a local 10-digit phone number so that the patient would recognize it, and then ultimately allowing the patient to text back or call back and actually get connected to the sales representative that knows who they are. And these 3 things was not available anywhere unless you built it yourself. And that's what we had to do at first. Like, obviously I wasn't like, oh, wow, we need to build this product right away. First I was like, okay, well, we can probably find a way to code a solution using some of the kind of VoIP APIs, like the internet phone providers that has coding languages for it, like Twilio. So we got to work, started building it. 3 weeks later, we had a very basic version of the products. And then the marketing team got back to us and said, hey, maybe we can change up the wording a little bit. So scrap that. 3 weeks later, again, we finally have what we could put into place. And that was 1.5 months after we started the project, figured out that there was no code alternative. And still, it was just a static solution that sent a message. There was no inbox, so there actually was no way for the reps to see if somebody texted back. It was just like not ideal. And that was the time where I was like, okay, well, this cannot possibly be this hard. Like, if this is a problem I have with just getting a local text message number, this is not something unique. I'm sure other people have this problem. Let's just build it. So that's when I called up like kind of our head of engineering and got him convinced. At the time, he was the youngest professor in OU computer science history. So was extremely convinced that if anybody could do this, it would be him. And 30 minutes of a call. This was like December 2018, sitting at the airport, flying home to Norway for Christmas. Surprisingly got him convinced to test this out. Promised him it would take 4 weeks to build. Obviously, our prototype launched 6 months later, uh, but it at least got into the world, got some engagements along the way. We brought on the two other co-founders as well, Matt Morf and Peter Daggett. And kind of the rest is history. When we launched it in June of 2019, we broke even already 2 months later, and continued to see growth about 60% month over month, just more or less organic, no money on marketing, which was really fun to see. So it was kind of true what I thought. This was a problem that was big, but not that vague. Like there was other people who could still find their way to our product from the solution they were looking for. So
No, I love that.
yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I feel like that will help business owners, Martin, is why do people need texting as a marketing strategy nowadays?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question. So I would say the bigger differentiator there is, what do you define as texting? Because there is texting solutions out there that is just 5 digit. It's just a notification message, and it comes off as just a notification. There's no way for them to really respond unless like respond 3 to get your discount or whatnot. And then there's like the local text messages where you can, or just 10 digit in general, even if it's toll free, that lets you text back. And I would say that is a major differentiator. Don't like focusing on the local kind of like aspects. That way you can really build a relationship, and get in front of them. Texting them like your friends is important. The way you use it as a strategy. Don't just text discounts or information. In that case, you might as well just send an email or get in front of them with a 5 digit message. But if you are using a local phone number, you can really get to be there for them. And that's what we're seeing with most of our kind of multi-location customers right now, where they are setting up an automation that comes from a number from a representative in the store. So each location for their company has their own local 10-digit phone number. And if there's a customer around them, that's who gets the automated kind of like outreach for information about a campaign or information about something that's happening, prompting the customer to either call or text back. But the text back or call back goes directly to that location. So there's no infrastructure needed. That's kind of just like built within. And by doing that, you're just kind of helping be available for your customers instead of just notifying them. Because I can imagine that in a couple of years, or even already, that there is a lot of people who, if they sign up to a lot of these companies' rewards programs, that you get a lot of messages already. So focusing on that human touch and being as personal as possible, I think, is more important than ever.
Yeah, so I have a digital marketing client that are dealerships, like auto dealerships, and they get leads, and they live and die off of leads. Like, they'll get hundreds of leads a month, because I'm trying to make this where people could understand this. I mean, we could use a dental office or whatever, but, so they would get a lead in, on a certain vehicle, and then you could have a delayed response, 3, 5, 10 minutes, whatever. And then a text could be sent to them that's very personal with internet salesperson could respond to that text from that number.
Absolutely. So that's a great use case, where if you have a product on the market, let's stick to dealerships. If there is a car that you're trying to sell, and you put the ad out, people reach out for information through a forum or through some other digital medium, then you could send that automation to come out. Hey, this is Jason from Jason's dealership. I just wanted to let you know that we still have it available. And of course, you could pull in information from that form, right? So if they said, I was interested in the blue Ford, then you can also say like, hey, and then of course, let's say I'm the buyer. Hey, Martin, this is Jason from Jason's dealership. I know you're interested in the blue Ford. Just let me know if you want to come by and check it out today. And from all intents and purposes, that customer feels like Jason from Jason's dealership took time out of his day and was so on it that he got back to them within 3 minutes, and was excited to get in front of them. Because I think that is the important difference. When you get a message instantly after filling something out, that is completely automated. When you get that message 3 to 5 minutes afterwards, that is you just being extremely on your on your game, and getting in front of them while you're still top of mind.
No, I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great explanation of your program. Now, is it really expensive, or is it how did you figure out pricing on it?
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, no, that was like kind of our main focus. When we started, we actually just tried to be a layer, like where we were just an inbox for people who could just get their phone number from wherever source they wanted, from whatever VoIP API that they wanted to choose. So they could choose the cheapest or whatever they wanted to use. So that way we could keep the cost low. And that's something we're still sticking to today, trying to be cheap when it comes to how much it costs to use, how many messages cost. Now we've made it a lot easier, since we've allowed people to just secure a local 10-digit number through our platform, not requiring any credit card or anything. It really is just signing up, testing it out, seeing if it is for you, getting 50 free messages to kind of play around with. And then costs kind of start from location based or from phone number based. But an organization can choose to have several phone numbers if they have a sales team, let's say, and they want to make sure that each phone number is available but sending on behalf of each rep. But then the sales manager can control what wording goes out for the automations for everybody.
No, I love
So
I
it's
love that.
yeah. So it makes it a
So
lot easier.
is it small business? I mean, could a small business afford this, like a dental office that's setting appointments and they want to have a text go out, or okay, cool.
Yeah, and it starts at $60 a month. But of course, we right now have a couple campaigns, and that's something that, of course, if anybody wanted to try this out, and is worried about the current situation, please reach out to me. I would be happy to generate a discount code to make sure that you got a couple months for free to test it out. But it's it's definitely very cost effective. That was my biggest approach, because I was going into this knowing that it was possible to do if you had $3 million.
Right.
And I was like, well, that is not available to me when I'm working with what at the time was 11 employees. So kind of getting into that, it was always meant for small and medium-sized businesses. And right now, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing local kind of restaurants. We're seeing local clinics. And then, of course, we work with larger nationwide chains as well, helping them maintain that local feel, where they can have each location have their own phone number and reaching out from somebody who is at that store, or at least on behalf of somebody who's at that store. So that when they call in and they're expecting Jeff because the text came out as, hey, this is Jeff from this location, then they actually get a hold of Jeff. So it's trying to make sure that you build those relationships and that you want to go there, and texting with your customers instead of at them. So you're not just sending deals. You're trying to I want to go there because Jeff's there.
No, I love that. I think that's really awesome. After the show, I have to talk to you about that. But real quick, what is I know we haven't even got to the point to where we had some crazy stories, so I kind of want to get into that because I know there's some precious gems involved. So you start these other companies. Now you get into Respond Flow, and you're just first starting out. Kind of walk us through, because this has been about a year that you've been going through this crazy process.
Yeah, so I mean, basically decided to do this December 2018, but I wouldn't really count those early months too much, because it was, of course, just kind of a couple nights and weekends trying to build the thing first. But as soon as it launched, it really started. So that was in June of 2019. It was a very typical startup story, or I guess you could call it stereotypical. We were just four young dudes living in a house together in OKC at the time. We all had full-time jobs, so we just had nights and weekends on this. So we basically sacrificed whatever we had of a social life to just every single time we got back from work, let's say 5 p.m., got home, sat down on our couch, and whipped out our computers and started coding, selling, building websites, whatever we could to try and grow this thing. And we did that for a full year. Eventually we got like a KPI board up on the wall, feeling very official, like had a little second living room where we had all our desks, and that kind of became our office. Every weekend was whiteboarding sessions. We'd go door to door. I mean, it was just kind of just us kind of just hustling as much as we could.
Right.
And it was fun. It was really fun. And initially the project was just intended to be a side hustle. But as soon as we got introduced to this accelerator, there's an OKC called the Thunder Launchpad, and worked with incredible people like Gabby, Erica, and Chris that runs the place. We got kind of set in front of a demo day that was quickly approaching, where we were supposed to get in front of some great investors locally. And initially, I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure if we're wanting to raise money, if we're just keeping this as a side hustle. But we got together with the guys and was like, okay, what if we just try? We might as well just ask for a couple like thousand and see if it works. If it works, then we can go full time. That'd be great. But if we don't try, then we will never know. So I think it was 2 weeks ahead of the actual demo day. Out of like a 10-week program, we were like, okay, we might as well just let's ask for like $500,000 and see if somebody's interested, and see if that's something that we can do. At demo day, we got in front of a couple investors. One even came up and was like, hey, so would $250,000 get you to Tulsa? That ended up actually being our lead investor
Oh,
right now
wow.
in Tulsa. So we got in front of a couple investors, and suddenly it became a lot more real that this is something that we could get venture backed and scale up at a much quicker pace than what we intended. So as we were going through that, we were going back and forth with a bunch of investors. Suddenly I was like feeling way behind, because I should have probably reached out to all these investors ahead of time. And as any fundraising goes, of course, it takes at least 3 times as long as what you intended. We started this fundraiser probably like in November of 2019, and closed it in May. So it was a long time where we were just talking back and forth. Of course, additionally growing the company every single week and month, and of course, we were all getting pretty exhausted. But in March, we were coming close towards that end goal. We felt we had 2 investors who were really interested. They were ready to go. And just before a decision deadline on a Monday, so this was on a Friday, I got an email from one of the investors. This was in the height of COVID lockdowns, and one of the investors reached out and said, "I'm sorry, we're out. We can't really do this right now. We have other investments that we need to back. Otherwise, we lose money that we had already sunk in them. So sorry. Better luck next time." And this was somebody who we thought had already basically committed to investing. And to make it a little bit worse, they also CC'd the other investor. So they were also aware. So I was sitting there at my day job, at my desk, reading this, feeling the cold sweat coming on, because some of the guys were like, "Oh yeah, I'm ready to quit my job. Like, we're going to do this on Monday. We'll get the good news." I was supposed to stop by a liquor store on the way home, picking up some champagne to celebrate. Ended up getting some whiskey instead. Got back into the house where everybody was. Told everybody, "Let's sit down. Let's talk about this." And obviously had to share the grueling news that what felt like our entire fundraiser was completely dead. Like we couldn't fathom that anybody would invest at this time, because of COVID and everything. So everybody, of course, got extremely distraught, and really sad about the news. And we kind of just moped around for the rest of the day. But I said, okay, in the morning at 10 a.m., let's meet down here. Let's figure this out. I mean, we started this as bootstrap. Let's see what we can do with this. We probably don't need that much more for us to really get to the point where we can close a big customer that we already had lined up. So that morning, I was expecting everybody to kind of ditch, because the vibe was definitely everybody was very tired after that news. But to my shock and awe, they were already down there whiteboarding, had already gotten coffee from Dunkin', was just like, okay, let's get to this. And that morning we decided, okay, all we need is for Austin, kind of our head engineer, to be able to go full time for 3 months. So let's say we need $20,000 to make this work. Let's just see if we can get $20,000. So we called up every single investor that had previously passed. We called up friends, family, everybody that we could even fathom would have enough money to be able to invest. And within 4 hours, we had gotten commitments of $388,000.
Wow.
36,000 of 38,000 of which was in precious gemstones. So it was kind of a crazy day. I mean, the precious gemstones was actually the first money that was committed. And we were like, holy shit, what just happened? Right. So, it was crazy. So that, of course, I called back the other investor that hadn't yet passed, and explained the situation. Obviously he didn't believe me. He was like, what, gemstones? What are you talking about? And of course needed to talk to all the investors, but that's kind of how fast it switched around. I mean, we were kind of ready to lay down, and it would have probably been easy for us to just be depressed and stay in our beds that entire weekend. But just kind of pushing through there was, at least when I realized that, like, the team and I were like, we can do this. We'll just need to overcome everything, and we'll get there. So it was a really great time.
No, I love that. I think that just that whole idea of being able to push through, like you said, and then in 4 hours to receive. I mean, you guys were looking at 20 grand, just to get your engineer to be able to quit his job. Now, next thing you know, you've got this in 4 hours because of your attitude. You ended up getting $300 something thousand. I mean, that is nuts. And so what did that $300 something thousand, what changed plans now? I mean, what did it enable you guys to do?
Oh yeah, no, like with that committed, we were like, okay, well shit, we're all quitting our jobs. So that very weekend, I think all of us called our bosses and explained the situation, and gave our kind of 2 weeks notice. So it went from just like, okay, let's shift back from the whole thinking that we're going to raise. Let's go back to whole bootstrapping. What can we do, to suddenly being like, oh, wow, we've never been closer. And kind of just to add to a cherry on top, that very like Monday, we also got a letter from Y Combinator, inviting us to the second round of interviews. And we were like, oh my God, what is going on? Right. So it definitely stands by the roller coaster that is a startup. But it was, suddenly we all quit our jobs. We all went full time with this. We were trying to just raise 500,000. So now that we have the 388 or so committed from the other kind of investors that came on that Saturday, suddenly we're pretty confident that we were going to get the commitment from the other investor as well. And we kind of just pushed through and went on with the plans that we had. But yeah, it's a mental sport, trying to be flexible with this, and not let good news get too much in your head, and definitely don't get bad news stuck in your head either. But yeah, it's definitely a crazy lifestyle. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but it's fun.
So, I mean, like whenever you look at raising capital, because I know there's people out there that always look at, I want to start a tech company, and they call them unicorns for a reason. What is kind of some of the things that you've learned through this whole process, and maybe not just in raising capital, but you've learned, to close out the show, that you've learned in this crazy life of starting a company and being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing is ask. Like it's so easy to just like hope you will get a chance. Like,
Mm.
I mean, for my sake, it's like, and it goes on both sides of the spectrum. Like for young people right out of college, you feel like you don't have the validity. You haven't been granted the permission to go out on your own because you don't have enough expertise. And that's probably the biggest thing. And that's what I learned while I was in Boulder as well, where it's, like most young founders are just, I mean, they're playing by play, like play by play, but they're just taking risks and making those asks, and just going for it. So I would say that's probably one of the big things. And when it comes to fundraising, it's honestly almost the same thing. It's like get in front of them, show that you have, of course, some legs to stand on. But in the end of the day, they don't really care what that money, like how much revenue you're making, as long as you're showing consistent upward mobility and growth. Because of course, like there's like when we were raising, I think we had just breached like 1,000 MRR, like early, like that into the summer kind of when we just launched and got in front of a couple of the investors. But that felt like $1 million to us, right? But in reality, they didn't care about that. That was so irrelevant to them. Like that is so low. All they cared about was whether or not we had kind of the tenacity to continue growing that, and whether or not we could be good stewards of capital. So showing that and getting in front of it with financials and knowing your finances, that's probably one of the areas that I would focus on specifically before a race. Getting together with all of the financials that you need, making sure that you know how to calculate it. Because you get questions kind of out of left field when you're sitting in investor kind of call, and you have to calculate it right away. If you don't know, it's okay, but it definitely looks better if you do.
No, I love that. And if there's a small business, medium-sized business listening, and they want to be a part of getting into this whole idea of being very personal and being able to text someone, text a customer, maybe they're getting an appointment and they want to be able to have it, to get their leads responded through text, not just an email, or have a sales rep do a phone call. What's the best way that they can sign up for RespondFlow?
Yeah, so that would be respondflow.com, where people can just sign up for completely free, no credit card needed. Search up the area code that you're in and just snag a number real quick, and then you can start playing with it. Of course, reach out if you have any questions or concerns. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to test this out, I'd be happy to get you in front of one of our consultants and make sure that you have a great strategy that's going to give you the ROI you're looking for. And also, of course, look into helping you out with the free month. So feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn at Martin Langelo Leon, or directly at my email at martin@respondflow.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Martin. I appreciate you being on the show. It was awesome. I loved your story. I know you being in entrepreneurship and coming from Norway to here. It's just an exciting story, and it's something that is inspirational to us all. I know there was that moment where you guys almost were done. And then, this whole idea of entrepreneurship for each and every, it's available to anyone if they're willing to, like you said, hustle, put in the work, and try to figure out how to solve a problem. And I love that you said that. And I appreciate you being on the ABQ Business Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jason. Yeah, it's been a pleasure being on.
Well, thanks, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Albuquerque Business Podcast. And thanks to our sponsor, RigbyDigital.com. Make sure to subscribe and share, and go to abqpodcast.com. Get show notes, resources, and links to everything we talked about today to help you navigate your journey as an entrepreneur and business owner.